Well, greetings, everyone. It is that time again. What time is it? It is time for another live broadcast of Candid Conversations with Chenille. Again, I am so excited about our topic on tonight. I believe that we are going to have some great discussion. So, tonight we're going to be talking about the delusion of insecurities colon hidden in plain sight. Yep, this topic is definitely going to be interesting, and it is going to be one that you are going to want to engage in and tune in on. So, we're not going to delay because the topic is loaded, and oftentimes we run out of just a little bit of time. So, I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to jump in and to engage in our topic on tonight. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about insecurities. And so, over the last few candid conversations, we've had some great topics about different things that contribute to the common thread that we all share. So, tonight, we're going to look at insecurities just a little bit closer, and we're going to look a little bit deeper because oftentimes when we think about insecurities, if we were when we were coming up young, when we said, oh, she's so insecure, what were we oftentimes saying that somebody was so insecure about? Most of the time it was about somebody's boyfriend or somebody's girlfriend that we tagged them as being insecure. And a lot of times it wasn't that they were insecure, it more closely related to someone being jealous. But in our youthfulness, we would say, oh, you're just so insecure. You're so insecure about your boyfriend. You're so insecure about this. But again, it really tied to someone being more jealous. But we're not going to look at jealous on tonight. We're going to look at insecurities. All right. So I actually have something that I wanted you all to look at. Okay. That's picture number 1. Here's our pic number 2. Pic number 3. And then we have, let's see, our famous one that made us love this movie. And how many of you can guess what the movie is? I'll give you a moment to add your comments. Just a moment. What is the name of our movie? Okay. Waiting on a couple of comments to pop up. I'm going to give you maybe about 30 seconds because I know this is a hard one for you. All right. You guessed it. It is definitely our love and basketball. So I actually did not look at this movie as it pertains to insecurities until I started doing a little bit of work on insecurities. And so the thing about this game, we all know Monica Wright, played by Sanaa Lathan. Of course, she was the basketball star here. She was a basketball star female. And of course, she was dating another basketball star that we all know, Quincy McCall, played by Omar Epps. And so they both were basketball stars. And here is the crazy thing, they both had insecurities. Can you believe that? Yeah, I know, right? I did not think about love and basketball by way of insecurities. The only thing that we thought about was the absolutely beautiful story of Monica and Quincy, as they endeavor or embarked upon their basketball careers. But when we look at them, Monica had her own set of insecurities because she was playing a sport that was at that time seemingly dominated by males. And so not only did she have to deal with that, but she also had to deal with the star player later on in the movie. And it's like she was catching a hard time on all ends, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. And then when we look at Quincy, his problem was that his father was a former NBA player. So, of course, the pressure was on him to live up to the hype. And so that's their story. But what is our story? What has caused us to possibly experience insecurities? And so, insecurities, it seems like a very general term, not too much to it, but insecurities can change our lives. And in changing our lives, it can cause us to lose some things and to also lose some people where if we don't deal with and recognize these insecurities. So initially, during my studying, oh my God, I had maybe about 8 or 9 different things, maybe even 10 things to talk about. But we both know that I would not have made it through all 10 of those. So I did my very best to narrow it down to 5 things when it comes to insecurities. So let's talk about what are some of the signs or behaviors when we are insecure. The first thing that I came up with is perfect presence. Perfect presence. PRESENCE. What is a perfect presence? Exactly what it says. Everything about us has to be perfect in our own eyes. So I consider that perfect presence. It goes down to our appearance. Everything has to be meticulous. Our nails, our hair, our feet, our clothes, everything about us is so perfectly laid out. How can that be attributed to insecurities? We're going to get down to that. Another thing within our perfect presence, high achievement standards. We set these extremely high standards that we're trying to achieve at all times. Social media curation. What does that mean? Every single thing that we post on Facebook is positive about us. It always reflects our good side. We can never post when we're insecure. Now that was crazy to me because it would almost seem like people are confident. And I'm not saying that there are not confident people that are posting on Facebook. I am saying that sometimes our insecurities will allow us to hide on Facebook or social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn. These platforms will allow us to hide if we're insecure. Another thing with the perfect presence is we have to even be perfect in our communication. We want all of the words to be right, whoever we're talking to. We want to present this perfect persona that we have it all together. And one of the things that stood out to me when we want to have a perfect presence is that we learn to suppress our emotions. Now, that's deep right there to me. Our aim and our goal is to present a perfected us that we learn to naturally suppress our emotions. What does that mean? That means that we learn how to practice staying calm and collective at all times. So it gives the appearance to others that nothing is going wrong with us, where it's everything is always perfect in our lives. So that's the perfect presence. And so stay with me because we're going to talk about some of the harm and some of the dangers in these behaviors that we may exhibit. The second one I came up with, I titled that Humor as Armor. Interesting. So, some people tend to joke a lot, but more than joking a lot, what they do is when I say humor as armor, they make jokes about themselves. And those jokes about themselves are really designed to mask their insecurities. So they joke, and a lot of times, what people do is they say it before someone else says it. But at the end of the day, it's really an insecurity that is being utilized to mask the real me. I come to realize that some people are afraid of who they really are. And instead of coming face to face with who they really are, then they'll pretend like there's nothing going on. They'll mask, and the things that are obvious to people, then they tend to make a joke about it. They make light of it. And so I made a note of something, and it says they use humor as a defense mechanism or a coping strategy to protect themselves from emotional discomfort. So, to protect myself, I'll go ahead and talk about my own self up front. That way, it throws light off of me because I've already beat you saying what we both know to be true. Another note I made is humor as an armor. Catch this. It offers a light-hearted shield. It's like wielding a witty sword to deflect deeper emotional wounds. So it's a way that we learn to protect ourselves by beating up on ourselves. Because at the end of the day, although we're making a joke about it, it's a problem. Can you all agree with that? We're making a joke, but we don't really believe the joke that we're telling. And deep down, it's really a problem for us. And so, my best way to handle this is to go ahead and bring it to the forefront myself. So now, hopefully and prayerfully, it's not on the mind of anyone else. Humor as an armor, which is a very detrimental sign of an insecurity. Number 3, pushed perfectionism. Okay, so I had to look at this one a whole lot deeper because I'm one in times past, I always considered myself a perfectionist. And so all my life, I had this perfectionist syndrome. And so everything had to be right. If everything was not right, I was my worst critic. I wanted to address this because some of us are still living today in this perfectionism, and we don't allow ourselves to be anything else other than perfect. You do realize that perfectionism is not possible. We're not going to ever achieve that which we've carved out for our own selves. And even more than that, perfectionism shuts out God, the one that created us, the one that had his plans for us even when we were in our mother's womb. God already knew what he desired of us. And so perfectionism, I would say this, it can easily cloud our judgment, and it can cause our perception about ourselves to be off. I can dive deeper with that. It can cause our perception of others to be off. We have to understand that when we operate in perfectionism, then we've actually, instead of expanding ourselves, we've limited ourselves. You ask, how have we limited ourselves? Because we're doing it. And what we do is always limited. What we do without God and his plan, his design for us, we're automatically limited. And a lot of times we think that perfectionism is going to cause us to expand and to grow. But perfectionism causes us to do the total opposite. And it causes us to be even more insecure. Oh my God, how can this be? Because we are our barometer. We are the ones with the gauge. And so when we operate in perfectionism, when we don't perform at 125%, because perfectionist 100% is typically not the goal. The goal is always somewhere like 125%. And when we're not performing at that 125% at all times, 24 hours a day, even in our sleep, I'm talking good. I can talk perfectionism. This was my area that I didn't realize was not good for years. I didn't realize that pushing myself towards perfectionism was breaking myself down. Oh my God. I came to talk to the perfectionist on tonight. It seems that way, that trying to be a perfectionist will break you down. It will break you down mentally, physically, emotionally. because you'll never give yourself a break. You'll never do anything where you can say, I did a good job on that. Perfectionists are always looking at something in a way that I could have done better. I should have done this. I should have done that. And a lot of times, what happens is we delay ourselves with all the I should have, I could have, I would have, I needed to. Oh my God. Perfectionism, I found out, was an insecurity for me. Why was I pushing so hard? Remember, initially I said, I'm my worst critic. So you would think that I was pushing so hard for me. Let's look deeper. Is it really for me? Is it really for you? Think about that. If you're a perfectionist, who is this for? Yes, I believe that it can be for you. It can be something that pushes you, your in how you're wired and how you're built. Yes, I believe that we can strive and we can do these things and we can genuinely be perfectionists. But I also believe through experience, through taking a deeper look at where I've come from, the things that I was faced with, I believe that that bout of perfectionism in me was not just for me, but it was for others. Okay, so what do you mean by that? It was for others. Hmm. It was for approval. Let's just say it. It was so that I could gain approval from others. Now, the approval does not always have to be said. You do understand that there are ways that we perceive that someone is approving us. And it could be simply in their behaviors, in their mannerism, how they act toward us, if they invite us to be a part of this, if we get called out on the office after hours when everybody else is going out to dinner, do we get invited? And so our wanting to be approved comes through many different channels. And the thing that I've learned as I get a little bit older, not too much older, but as I get a little bit older, it is so important for me to realize who I am at this present moment. Because who I am at this present moment is going to have an impact on who I am in the upcoming days. Who I am has the propensity to cause me to be this very same person the next 5 years of my life, the next 10 years of my life. If I don't pause and take a break and be honest with myself and understand who I am right now, but not only who I am right now, but what has caused me to become the person that I am right now at this moment in my life. And so, yes, being a perfectionist was not who I believe I completely started off to be. There were some things that happened in my life along the way that caused me to push harder. I believe for me, and I'm not speaking for anybody else, I believe that I already had a level of independence. Where that independence was cultivated by different scenarios that I had to deal with in the younger years of my life. And so from there, that independence, then having somebody who was dependent on me probably pushed me towards that place of feeling like I couldn't fail. Oh my God. Oh my God. Let me take you back. What has caused you, if you're operating as a perfectionist, what has caused that? What has caused you to do it? And so for me, the feeling that I cannot fail, there is somebody looking at me, and there is somebody that I want to achieve great things. So now I take on my shoulders the responsibility of perfectionism. I got to get this right. I can't drop the ball. Because if I drop the ball, then they're going to drop the ball. And if they drop the ball, that's my fault because they dropped the ball. You do understand that perfectionists will take on things that may not necessarily be meant for them to take on. And what do I mean by that? That means that we'll blame ourselves for something else that has happened, all because we have this perfectionist mentality. Sometimes things don't work out for us because there was another contributing factor. It wasn't because you didn't get it right, you didn't do it right. It was because something else played a part in it. Oh my God, that's deep. And as I often do, we see I've gotten stuck on talking about this perfectionism because sometimes that root is insecurity. And so we think that perfectionism is a good thing, and we push ourselves, we drive and we strive, and every project we do is never good enough. We wait for the next project to do so we can do it even better. And sometimes this perfectionist thing is us against us. We're face to face with ourselves, trying to perfect ourselves to do it better than we did before. Let me tell you something that will literally drive you insane. That will be one of your greatest frustrations. And let me let you in on something else. When you're a perfectionist, you put pressure on other people to do sometimes unrealistic stuff. Just because you're pushing yourself and do it, most of the times when you're a perfectionist, you do a lot of unrealistic things. You set unrealistic goals. And then when those unrealistic goals don't work out, then you're upset with yourself. Oh my God. And then your mind is running in all different directions. And ultimately, when you're a perfectionist, it stops progress. What do I mean by it stops progress? Perfectionism is typically linked to a word that you may or may not say, failure. And when you feel like you failed and you haven't done something right, it will stop progress. What does that look like? Stagnation, procrastination. You know why? Because you're too afraid that the next thing you do, you're going to fail. So what do? You prepare and over prepare and prepare and over prepare some more. You prepare again and over prepare. And you know what you end up doing? The very first thing that you had in mind is the very first thing that you go to. You know why? Because that's what you needed to do the whole entire time. But that perfectionism in you continues to tell you that you're doing something wrong. You haven't prepared enough. You're not ready. Oh my God, I got to go back and listen to this myself. Perfectionism will drive you crazy. Why? Do you realize that you have a problem with flawed performance? That's your problem. When you're a perfectionist, if something is not perfect, it's flawed to you. And deep down, you have an issue with flawed performance. Not only do you have that issue with yourself, you have it with other people too. I have to clap myself off of that one, because perfectionism, we put pressure. Let me add this. We put undue pressure on ourselves and other people, and it hinders our growth. And if we're not careful, somebody else's growth. Let me move on. We're 34 minutes in. Let me move on. Number 4, value and validation. So let me go back really quick. And I want these put on the screen for me, because there are some technical difficulties going on right now. So I'm not able to see any comments or anything on the screen. It actually looks like no one is on here on my end. So let me see if I can get this put on the screen. Behaviors related to insecurities. So I want to go back and name those again. Number 1 was perfect presence. Perfect presence. Number 2, humor as armor. And I'm typing this in the comments as well. All right. And our number 3, pushed perfectionism. I want you all to be able to grasp this, but to go back and in your own timing to really look at any of these that are relative to you. Now, let's talk about number 4, value and validation. Okay, so how did I come up with that? Our value and validation. Because we place a lot of value on being validated by certain people. Here's what's crazy. We really don't care about being validated by everybody, but there is somebody that you want to be validated by. Come on now. Come on now. Let's keep it 100. There is somebody in our lives that we want to be validated by. Am I telling the truth? As a matter of fact, when I said it, you can think of somebody already that you have in mind that you want to be validated by. And what is that value in validation? That value is up to you. But it's some kind of value that you've established that them validating, it means that much to you. So whatever that amount is, or whatever the significance of that is, only you know that. And some people, them validating us means more depending on the person. So it's not set, it just depends on who it is. All right, so let's look at some of my notes. People who seek validation want reassurance from others. And this is something that came to me as I was preparing. People that seek validation, they'll want it from children. Oh my God. How in the world do we want validation from children? Because we want children to validate what we mean to them. I didn't say your kids. I didn't say your nephews, your aunts. Lord, your nephews, your cousins. I said we'll seek validation from children. Oh my God. Have you ever been around kids or worked with kids? It's crazy, but we can even look to them for validation. I'm going to let that marinate just a minute. We don't always just look to adults for validation. If we're not getting it from adults, and sometimes if we are, when we're a type of person that we place value in validation and we're always seeking validation, we'll seek it from anybody. Let me bring that a little closer. We want to know sometimes what teens think of us. We'll give them the opportunity to place value on who we are. Oh, my Lord. This value and validation is deep because I think it's safe to say we want to be validated. And sometimes it's abnormal to the extent that we want validation, because sometimes we can't go forward without it. Oh my God. But what happens when God places us in positions where we're not going to get validated, at least not on that level? Oh my God. And now what do we do? Now, how do we go forward? I'm going to move on because that's meaty right there. That's deep right there, because there are so many people stuck because they're waiting to be validated. Let me let you in on something. Sometimes people don't realize that you need to be validated. It's an honest oversight. They don't realize that you need it. And so we're waiting for something that may not happen. Just because you have not been validated, it doesn't mean that you don't need to do it, don't not need to do it, because you haven't been validated. And then the flip side of that is that some people know you like a book. They've studied you. They know what you need. And if they think that validation is going to push you farther than where they are, and that's on the job, that's in the home, that's in ministry, that's in our social civic activities, recreational activities that we do. Sometimes people know us better than we know ourselves. And so sometimes if they know that we need validation, they will withhold it. If they know that that's going to keep you stuck, then baby, I'm not validating anything. Oh, I'm talking real right there. People will manipulate and they'll do you like you're a puppet when people understand that you need validation and you don't understand that this is a form of insecurity and something I need to address and to deal with. And so sometimes, again, waiting on validation, we get stuck. Waiting on somebody to say, you are, you can, you will, you have what it takes. You're changing lives. You make a difference. We'll sit and wait on those words as our approval to go. But I want to tell you, whether you receive validation or not should not be a determining factor in whether you move, whether there is movement in your life. The last one is, and before I say our last one, let me make note of this. Seeking validation and you're from a place of insecurity, it puts strain on your relationships. How? Because I don't know what you need sometimes. And so you're holding me to something that I may not even know. Because when you're insecure, remember I said that we do very well at masking. And so if you're giving, you have it all together, and there's nothing ever going on with you, and you're strong as Atlas, then I may genuinely not know that you need to be validated. And so now there's a strain on our relationship because you feeling some type of way about something that people may not even know. Because on the outside, you're giving something different. All right. Number 5, simple: isolation and withdrawal. When we're insecure, we will isolate and withdraw ourselves from people. Point blank, period. I said that. I did. And here is what we disguise it under. I just like being by myself. I don't really want to be bothered with too many people. But the reality, we're isolating because most of the time, other than the insecurity, we fear rejection. We're isolating too because we're afraid to make mistakes in front of other people. Oh my God. Sometimes we isolate and withdraw because this one may punch some of us in the stomach, but we tend to isolate and withdraw because we're very critical and judgmental. And so if I isolate and I withdraw, then I reserve the right to stand and criticize and judge everybody else. But I don't want anybody criticizing and judging me. So I isolate and I withdraw because of my insecurities. Again, we're not just isolating and withdrawing to do it, because everybody wants to be around somebody. And if you're isolating and withdrawing, remember what I said. Trace it back. Why are you isolating and withdrawing? Okay. 10 minutes. Goodness. All right. What are, very quickly, some of the derivatives of insecurities? Where does this come from? One, for me personally, it was rooted in some of my early childhood experiences, those insecurities. And I'm going to name some things that happen that may have happened to you in early childhood that may have caused you to be at this place. Disclaimer, all of these are not applicable to me. I'm talking from a general perspective. So some of the things that could have been rooted in your early childhood experiences could have been parental criticism. Parental criticism will cause you to be insecure. That's a parent who criticizes everything that you do or talk down to you, even when they're doing it for the good, or they're doing it from a place where sometimes they're criticizing in hopes that you won't follow down the path that they've been. But parental criticism can cause insecurities. Lack of affection. When we have not received the affection that we need, it will cause you to be insecure. It will cause you, I believe, to crave what you never had. And so now I'm vulnerable to different things because I'm looking for affection. High expectations can cause you to have insecurities. When people have high expectations of you, it puts pressure on you if you're not careful to achieve every expectation that everybody has on you. So if your mom has an expectation, that's one. If your father has an expectation, that's another one. If you're very close to your cousins, that's a whole nother expectation. If you're seen as the one that's going to succeed and achieve, that's an expectation. Your kids have certain expectations on you. Your jobs have all of those things can create insecurities from trying to live up to so many different expectations. Oh my God. And don't have something that did not make it. So let me just go ahead and let me just get straight to the point with this. If you end up with what you may perceive as a failed marriage, failed relationship, whether it's a friendship with you and a friend or a coworker or whoever, those failed relations will create insecurities in you. Don't fool yourself. We tend to think that we can come from one relationship and go right into the next. And the reality is, I would say 97% of the time, we never deal with what happened to us. Next one. I definitely want to get to this. So, another derivative, and I know I'm not going to get past this one and get to the other two that I had because this one is a little bit loaded. So, another derivative of insecurities is influenced by our cognitive distortions. Ooh. Now, this was good to me when I studied it. So, our first cognitive distortion is identified as black and white thinking. It means all or nothing. Yes, right or wrong, good or bad, success or failure. It does not give any space for the nuances that are in between that. So we bottom line it. In other words, it's either good or bad, it's a success or a failure. It's right or it's wrong. We don't leave space for anything else. It allows us to have extreme judgments and it alleviates any flexibility for ourselves and other people. The next one in that particular area, overgeneralization. When you are insecure, that means you draw wide range conclusions from a single incident or limited evidence. When you overgeneralize, everything is massive to you. It can be something smaller, but you're going to blow one small incident or one incident up into a big thing. It's difficult when you're insecure to keep things as they are at that moment, at that time. What happened in this frame? And we even overgeneralize with limited evidence. You don't even have enough evidence to support how you thinking and how you're feeling, because it's rooted in insecurity. And so now your cognitive behavior has been altered. Next one, last one, catastrophizing. That means that we're always looking for the worst possible outcome in every single situation when we're insecure. We don't see the good in anything, and we don't think that anything can come out of this. And it can be one situation that has had maybe a negative outcome, but do understand that negative outcome may just be your opinion of what has happened. And so now, from that negative outcome in our mind, every other situation, every other interaction is going to be negative. Well, we are to the end of our candid conversations with Chenille. I hope and pray that you were enlightened and that you plan, as we stated, to go back and repeat and replay this, take some notes, and then identify the number one thing that stood out to you the most. And when you identify it, get to work on it. This is Candid Conversations with Chenille, where our conversations are always real, raw, relevant, and most of all, they're candid. I love you. Until next time, take good care. Good night.